Hi, my name is Renata. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This video is about presentations across cultures. Now, how did I get the idea for this video? Well, I work as a public speaking coach, and I very often coach people how to improve their presentations, how to overcome their anxiety, their fear of public speaking. But I'm also an intercultural trainer and a foreign language teacher. So sometimes these three elements come together. So, does it make a difference whether I present here in the US or abroad? So, what is different when I present across cultures and maybe in a foreign language? So, this is essentially what gave me the idea for this video. It's going to take about 22 minutes, and I hope I'll give you some very interesting insights into presentations in general here in the US, but also presenting across cultures. What is different? So I'll be sharing my slides as in most of my videos. And so let me share with you what's in this video today. So we're going to look at presentations bit mainly from an intercultural point of view. And so here's what's in it today. First of all, I'm going to focus on the US. This is what I tell my clients for intercultural, not only for intercultural coaching, but just public speaking training. Then we'll compare it to presentations across cultures. There is something called the application and the principle first approach. You'll learn more about it as we get there. Then the questions, interruptions, and feedback during and after presentation. Are there some differences we need to bear in mind? And finally, I'm going to focus on some listening habits and expectations across cultures, different expectations people have in different countries and cultures. But as I said, let's get started with the US. I've studied a lot of TED Talks. I've read a lot of books about public speaking, especially in the US. And I've created the system of the 4S or the 4S's of an effective presentation. So if you tick all the four boxes, then in the US, you're doing a great job of presenting or giving an effective presentation. Those four elements are structured, succinct, supreme content, and stimulating. What does it mean? Structured means that you're well prepared. You have some sort of script. Of course, you're not reading from the script, but at least you know what's on your script. You have some bullet points, maybe bullet point cards. You have a logical structure to it. It's timed well with smooth transitions. But you also want to capture the listener's attention, and you can really do this well by using signposts and mile markers. A signpost is telling them how long it takes, how many parts there are. Mile markers is when you say, okay, we've now reached the first part, the end of the first part, and we're transitioning to the second, or we're coming to the last part now. These mile markers give off the impression of a very structured presentation and make people feel that it's under control. Succinct means it all makes sense. So make sure that you're to the point, relevant, and coherent. Relevant to the audience, relevant to the topic, that you don't go off topic. You can use some humor to keep the listener's attention. Well, depending on culture, we'll come to that later. There may be differences across cultures, but definitely some humor in the US. And also make sure you follow a clear line of reasoning. As you're preparing your presentation, you're definitely thinking about content, what should go in, what should not. As you're putting together the content of your presentation, make sure that you look at it from your audience's perspective. Make sure you anticipate their expectations and try to fulfill those expectations. So be goal-oriented and have an objective. It's so important to have an objective, to know why you're doing this, and to identify your central message, to visualize it as much as possible. Make sure you tailor your presentation to the occasion and to the audience. And finally, stimulating. I can't emphasize this enough that it's very important. People want to be entertained. They want to have fun. They want to enjoy watching what you have to say, what you're going to do on that stage or presenting that new information to them. So make sure that you are professional in what you do, but also entertaining. Be confident and relaxed at the same time. Watch your tone of voice. Practice it with someone else. Say, how do you like my tone of voice? Does it make you feel comfortable? Am I too loud or something else that you don't like? Or is it just perfect for this person or this type of presentation? Also look at your language and body language if you're doing it in person. Be effortless and be memorable. Make sure there's something for your audience to take away. Like from the slide, the four S's. There are four words starting with S. I'm sure you'll take that away. Hopefully, you'll remember it's structured, succinct, supreme content, and stimulating. Now, moving from the US, presenting in the US, to presenting across cultures. What other things would you have to bear in mind? Well, let's go back to our audience. Understand your audience. When you present across cultures, you want to consider the national and regional culture. National, when it's for different countries. So if I present here in the US, my presentation is probably very different from when I present in Germany, for example. But also here in the US, it would make a huge difference whether I speak in New York City or in Birmingham, Alabama. Also, age and generation. So I believe I'm considered generation X. If I give a presentation for mainly Generation Z, I would have to do some research. What does this generation like? I might want to speak to someone to give me feedback on what the expectations are. Also, your audience's mindset and attitude. Maybe you've watched my other video, the introduction to intercultural communication, where I talk about different layers of culture. Well, referring to those layers of culture, what is your audience's mindset? What is their national region culture, but also professional culture, educational culture, maybe gender or class culture, corporate culture? What are their personalities like? So their mindset and attitude is very important to know. Are there any traditions or rituals, things you usually do before or after a presentation? Somebody you have to greet first, a procedure, some protocol to bear in mind. And very importantly, the listening habits and the expectations of your audience, a specific topic that I will address towards the end of this presentation. Also, you want to know your objective, the purpose of why you're doing this. Are you simply providing information like an education, like a lecture? Or do you want to maybe entertain people a little more, which we call edutainment? You learn something, but it's fun at the same time. Or are you selling something? Then it has to be more of a pitch, or you have to learn how to convince people. Or do you want people to do something? Is there a call to action? Learn how to appeal to them and motivate them. Be aware of those things before you put together your presentation. As you're presenting across cultures, there might be other elements to consider. It's the location. Are you doing it in person or online, or maybe it's a hybrid? What are people's expectations in terms of symbols, sounds, colors, and images? In certain culture, there may be symbols you don't want to use or sounds people really like, colors that are preferred, images that are taboos. Do your homework. Make sure you use the right ones for this particular audience. Also, did you plan on having some interaction with your audience, some activities? Did you want to do a Q&A session at the end? Is that something that is common in the other culture, or do people tend to not like it that much or even find it embarrassing? This is exactly what you want to do. You want to anticipate the audience's reaction. This is what they might think. And they might not like this, but I have to mention it. But then if you say, I need to mention something, I bet you find it unusual, or this is probably something you don't expect a speaker to say, and then you say it, and then your audience goes like, "Oh, she or he knew that this is coming." Also, in terms of your language, are you going to use any coded speech, jargon? Is that common? What is the native language of your audience, or is it a mix of different languages? Are they going to understand your coded speech and your jargon? If it's a different culture, what humor is common? Do they use humor at all in a serious speech? Yes or no? Is understatement common, or do they use euphemisms? Make sure you know what is common and popular in that culture. Also, your body language. If you do in-person speeches, in-person presentations, think about your body language and what is common and expected. Also, your tone of voice, the loudness of your voice, your intonation, and do you show emotions? Is it common in that culture to be emotional, to show happiness or disappointment and sadness? Or is it more common to pretend to have a poker face? Make sure you understand what are the expectations in the culture you're presenting. And finally, your own mindset. I coach a lot of people to work around their anxiety. They have an anxiety rush. It's normal. Professional speakers use it to transform it into a rush of positive energy and excitement. For some people, it may pan out as stage fright. So work on that. Make sure you actually feel very comfortable going on stage or standing up in front of a group of people. If you're not entirely sure you can do it, talk to someone, practice with a friend, or work with a coach to make sure you also deal with your own mindset and your own expectations. Now, there is this application first versus principle first approach I mentioned in the overview. These are two very distinct approaches as to how to present information. This is important to know because different cultures have different preferences. Application first means that I introduce the topic to you and sort of give you the result at the beginning. This is what we will find. I'm going to explain to you everything about A, B, and C, but here's my result. The result is X, Y, and Z. I present the result at a very early point on, and then go back to building the basics and explaining and summarizing, and maybe then there's a Q&A session at the end. Whereas principle first approach means I have to lay that foundation first. I have to tell you everything about A, B, and C, that I read about it. There was research about it. I tell you a story about it. Here are a few more details. This other thing is worthwhile mentioning about A, B, and C. And then after having told you all that, I come to the conclusion, which is X, Y, and Z. So wait until the very end to present my conclusion. There's no better or worse, there's just different, and I have to know what people prefer. You can actually compare this to an ice cream. The principle first application or the principle first approach, my apologies, the principle first approach means I build my ice cream layer by layer, and I end with a cherry on top. Whereas the application first approach is kind of the other way around. This one is well, the cherry comes at the end. But here in the US, for example, we have to put the cherry at the very, very early point of our presentation. People are waiting for the cherry. They're like, okay, this is what your presentation is about. Where's the cherry? Where's the cherry? Then when they know, they relax and they can listen to your input. But you have to know that you have to come up with the cherry, with the conclusion at a pretty early point in your presentation, not wait until the very end. Now, if that's a topic that really interests you, I can highly recommend this book, The Culture Map by Erin Meyer. This is an excerpt from her book. You can find that in chapter 3 about persuading. This is figure 3.1 on page 96, paying homage, giving reference to that book and that graphic. It really details these two approaches. Application first, principle first, gives you some examples, some details, and it also introduces like a third category or Asia, like a holistic approach. which is more like looping back and forth, considering all aspects of a situation and the interdependencies between all elements of your topic. So if you really find this topic interesting, that's a book I can highly recommend. A few other things to consider for presentations across cultures are questions and interruptions. And on my next slide, also feedback. So I want to talk about these two areas as well. So let's say you're done with your presentation. You have a Q&A session at the end. You say, any questions? Wouldn't you expect people to raise their hands, actively participate? But what if they don't? Did they not like your presentation? Or what is the reason why there are no questions? Does the question, do you have any questions, actually make them feel uncomfortable, and why? Well, asking the speaker a question is appreciated and shows your interest. Do you feel that way? Or is disrespectful and could embarrass the speaker? Maybe you feel that way. These are two very distinct cultural notions. So do your research. What is common in the culture you're presenting it? Do people actually appreciate questions? Do they have no fear of embarrassing the speaker because they feel questions are not embarrassing at all? It's part of a lively exchange. Or are there other ways of asking questions? Maybe there's a way of submitting questions in writing. Maybe there's another way of doing it. At least anticipate that the way you are used to doing it is maybe not the way they do it in the other culture where you're presenting. And what about interruptions? Do people interrupt? Is that normal? Are you expected to make some or present some rules at the beginning? I've attended presentations where people say, I'll give you a 10-minute presentation and then I will welcome your questions. Or I've attended presentations where people say, you can interrupt me at any time, just raise your hand. Or if it's online, just type your question in the Zoom chat. So make sure you find out what is the preference in the culture you're going to, what is expected, and what do people feel comfortable with. And there's this other topic with direct versus indirect feedback. So if you have a comment, especially a negative comment, if you want to say, let's say, provide constructive feedback to the presenter, also after the presentation, is that something you would actually do? Is that negative feedback maybe welcome because it's considered honest? It builds trust, it reduces misunderstanding. If I didn't understand, I ask. If I didn't like it, I say so. If I say, well, you might have made a mistake there, or I don't believe this is actually true. Can you tell me what you built the statement on? Um, this can be a fundamental value in a culture that you're able to do that, you're expected to do that, and the speaker is perfectly fine with it. Or do you feel more like giving negative feedback so directly is disrespectful, hurtful, and can destroy relationships? Well, then you should maybe not do it, or you should not expect it. Again, do your homework and find out what is common and expected in the culture where you're presenting. And of course, what about positive feedback? What if you have something great to say? Are you expected to say it, or is it a bit over the top? And how much of it can you say? In some cultures, we love praise. We can't get enough of it. And if you don't have words of praise, then you're rude. In other cultures, if you did a fine job, then it's not necessary to say a word because if I say nothing, then you automatically assume you did a fine job. So make sure you find out before you present in a particular country what is common and expected. These are just a couple of examples. Now, I want to focus on two last things, the listening habits and the expectations. And I picked four different countries to compare. This comes from Cross-Cultural Communication, a Visual Approach by Richard Deleuze. I'm a certified practitioner and have taken his courses. So I've read most of his books and I can highly recommend them. Anything by Richard D. Lewis, highly recommendable on communication across cultures and many very practical things. A lot of practical advice, like on presentations. So this comes from this book by Richard D. Lewis on listening habits, which is very important when you give presentations. So when you present to an American, a US American audience, what are their listening habits? Well, the biggest chunk is listening in snatches. So here's an important piece. Here's one thing that interests me. I'll remember this and this and that. But to glue it all together, please entertain me. Please tell me something new. Time is money. Get to the point. Remember the cherry on top. I need to know the most important things first. And then I decide what to listen to in snatches. Give me facts and figures, keep it simple. And if you want to sell something to me, oh yeah, you can give me the hard sell. That's perfectly fine. I'm very much interested in the bottom line. That's an expected behavior during presentations. Now let's compare that with another country. For example, Germany. And I do present a lot in these two countries, and I know very well how different it is. Germans tend to listen very well for information, so the attention span is excellent. So you can really present lots and lots of detailed information. There is a need for past history and context. Remember the other approach where we built information like an ice cream and the cherry comes on top at the very end. The principle first approach, that's the one that would work for Germany. So whatever you say, things are being taken quite literally. There's not much joking. There's more interest in what does it cost, more factual information, and what will happen if different scenarios. These kind of things are very well received. Just to give you another perspective, let's compare this to France. Also very good at listening for information, but really finding out what is relevant to France. Are there some compliments to France, like French is the best, or it's very elegant, appealing, has flair, but it has to be presented in a very logical way, relating to other projects and also kind of giving them the feeling that they already know. You're just adding information to what already makes sense. And maybe as a bit of a contrast, presenting in Japan, the majority of the listening habits is a courteous, smiling listening without interruptions. So no interruptions, no questions. Don't be surprised. Don't think your presentation is bad simply because nobody asks a question. It could be very good, very well appreciated, because there is a focus on solidarity and harmony and listening careful to understand every little thing, even if it's in a foreign language and they may not understand every single word, but they're trying very, very hard to understand, especially trying to listen for things that are not being said, the reading between the lines. So if you don't have a hidden message where they can't read between the lines, then that's actually very dissatisfying to a Japanese audience. So make sure you have something they can decipher, they can read between the lines. Make sure you as a speaker present in very polite manners and make sure that you give them the hints they expect. Now let's move on to our last slide, which is about expectations across cultures. Again, I want to use the same for countries. What would a US American audience expect in comparison to the other three countries? In general, Of course, we have differences between industries, generations, all those different layers of culture within the same country. But in general, it's probably a good idea to use some sort of humor, some sort of joking. No, don't overdo it, especially if you're not familiar with US American humor. It's better to not do it, but just know it's expected, it's okay, it's very acceptable. People are very much used to it. Show some generosity, modernity, use gimmicks and slogans, catchphrases. And if you want to sell, yes, you can do the hard sell. The mentioning of the US, anything that relates to it as a great country, always goes well. And it has to happen at a certain speed. You can't be slow. There's a sense of urgency that you should fulfill. To compare it to Germany, there's more focus on the solidity of a company and the product, more technical information, focus on quality and things like a good price and delivery date and so on. There would be no hard sell. There would be a soft sell. There would be a very good structure from the beginning to the middle to the ending, and you build momentum. And there's probably not much joking, much less, at least in comparison to the US. As far as France goes, don't underestimate the necessity for formality. Formality on the one side, but elegance or the sexy appeal of innovative product and imagination, that is also equally important. Have a logical structure, logical content, make a reference to France and greatness of the country, the language and the culture. Make sure that you have a personal touch. A little bit of humor, maybe irony may work well, but again, if you're not familiar, don't risk it. You can perfectly work without it. And people may interrupt. They may have questions in between. And even if you say, please wait with your questions until the very end, somebody may just ask a question in between. It's not rude, it's just part of the culture, of being lively and interactive. No questions, though, in Japan, as we said before. This is going to be focused on politeness and harmony, um, pointing out that the product has a unique selling point, really matches the qualities, the values of the business and the price. So the company image is very important. You have to show a lot of respect, respect for people. There's a lot of rituals you have to follow. Um, People will probably have a particular seating order. You have to really know your protocol before you do presentations in Japan. Be well dressed, well presented, well mannered, lots of formality, modesty, and diagrams to visualize what you have to say. Now, these are just a couple of samples for a couple of countries. If you're presenting in any other country, if you have questions, there's lots of information out there in books and videos, or you can work with a trainer or coach like me. But make sure you do your homework, you do your research before you present in another culture. Now, feeling confident? I hope you do as you're thinking of your presentation in another country, another culture. Any questions or need a coach? You know where to find me. You can find me online by looking for my name, Renata Urban, or my company name, Urban Training and Services. Visit my website or connect with me on LinkedIn, where I also publish lots of articles and may connect with you if you're looking for a teacher, trainer, coach in that particular area. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the topic. I will be making more of those videos. So if you enjoy that, please come back, join the community, and subscribe. And stay tuned for more content. Thank you.